Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you to Simsbury Community Media for filming, and to our clerk. It's nice to see you in person. Nice to have you here.
Thanks.
Our primary task tonight is to set the mill rate, and we also have a few other minor actions that we need to take and review. So we will begin by starting with the finance director's report. That is on pages 1 through 7 of your packets.
So the standard items in there, your approved supplementals to date, no changes there. Grant applications were updated. There was a couple savings initiatives updated. So I won't read that to you, but if you have any questions, happy to go back to the departments for follow-up. Under the assessor's performance audit report, we were hoping to have it sooner, but unfortunately there was an illness related to one of our consultants, so it got pushed back. So their report is expected this month. So as soon as we get it, we will forward it along to you and we'll add it to the next agenda. The financial summary, as of April 30th, 2024. If you look on page 5, you can see that our budget to actual variance is $2,073,904. So those are actual savings to date that we can count on for year end. The money has been booked in, received, recorded. So not a bad spot to be in right now. And then on the expenditure side, you can see that we're about 78.89% of expenditures. Essentially right in the area of where we should be. It's obviously a little bit lighter, but based on what we had provided during the last Board of Finance meeting, we are anticipating seeing savings, so that makes sense. Does anybody have any specific questions on the line items?
Just if you could talk about the Board of Ed savings. A couple weeks
sure.
ago, it was looking like a $500,000 deficit.
Yep. So the anticipated deficit for the Board of Education is about $500,000. We were able to reallocate some of the grant money, so unfortunately some of the projects that they wanted to do will not move forward, and we will reutilize that grant money to close the deficit. We have some salary and benefit savings, tuition revenues. Recently, there's been some student movement within the special education department. So all of those things in conjunction with the spending freeze, we're hoping to come very close, if not be able to close the deficit.
Tuition revenue that goes to the town though, not the schools, right? So that would still be using town resources.
I mean, technically, but they also have the students coming in. It's just they're not allowed to take in the revenue. Any other questions? Okay.
I did have, I'm sorry. Legal services, it's looking like that's on budget. Is that possible?
So right now it is, but I looked back at the projections for last quarter. It is probably going to be slightly over. I had a couple of notes on that. So we had some tax appeals that I think were finalized last night or in the process of finalizing, so we'll start to get those bills in. And then we actually do have a little bit of savings in that line item because of the contract negotiations where they did an interim 1-year contract and then the 3-year contracts will be deferred. So a little bit of savings, but we'll probably still be about slightly over.
And tax appeals, we had budgeted about $5 million, anticipated there. Do you know where that's coming in? How
I do
many?
not. I can look.
Can we get that number? Any other questions? Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to add on your report, Amy?
No.
When the compensation and benefits analysis is complete, can you forward a copy to our board? Thank you.
That's anticipated for June, I believe.
And then we'll go on to setting the mill rate. It's on page 10 of the packets if anyone is following along. This is mostly at this point an administrative task. The budgets have been set. The mill rate is what we need to raise the revenues through taxes to fund the budgets that were approved by the voters. Amy, do you wanna walk us through quickly what that is?
Sure. So we have our Board of Ed budget of the 28,884,809, Board of Education 85,217,644, and then all the others that were the referendum question of 19,512,894. So based on those budgets going to referendum, at our last meeting, we had a tentative mill rate of 32.26 mils for the town side. This does not include the fire district millage. With the fire district, it is 33.31. And then as you may recall, during the last meetings, we also discussed the motor vehicle mill rate. We had an agreement with the fire district to split that revenue coming in. So we will have two different mill rates. We will have 32.26 for the personal property and the real estate, and then we will have a mill rate of 31.44, I'm sorry, 32, I didn't note it in here, I think it's 31.44 mils for motor vehicle.
Where is that on this?
It's not.
It's not, as I said it, I think I,
Can you read those again then?
1 second, I just wanna double check the numbers before I say them.
I almost sent you an email on that over the weekend. I wish I had now, sorry.
That's alright. Yeah, so 31.44 mils will be motor vehicle, and then 32.26 mils will be real estate and personal property
So it still keeps the combined 33.31?
with the fire district, yes.
Okay.
So we'll have to amend that proposed motion.
We did get some information from Melissa Osborne that we're gonna get a higher reimbursement rate for Latimer. The money could be applied to reduce our bonding, or we could take it at the end for 500,000. Amy's recommending that we take it at the end because it won't really change the mill. Will it change the mill at all? It's about 25,000, 12,000. So if folks are comfortable with that recommendation, we'll take it later. Also, what happens with reimbursements is sometimes they exclude money that we thought was gonna be eligible for reimbursement, so we'll give that cushion. Still, congratulations, thank you for getting that, that will be a help down the line, so appreciate the work of our state and our state senator on that. Okay. Are there any other questions for Amy then? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion effective May 14, 2024 to set the mill rate for fiscal year 24-25 at 32.26 for the town.
Real estate and personal property.
Real estate and personal property,
And 31.44 for motor vehicle.
and 31.44 for motor vehicles.
So moved.
Second it?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. We'll now move on to, before we do move on to that, Bert was gonna mention something.
Madam Chair, it's been brought to my attention that pardon me, that we that is the town of Simsbury has a tax relief program for seniors, but that the income limit of our town is substantially lower than that of our neighboring towns, such as Avon and Farmington and Granby. And we should consider, or I'd like to encourage the town to consider increasing the limit for that tax abatement in order to help our seniors deal with the increased taxes or the increased tax burden that has been imposed over the last few years.
I concur with that. That is something that would be done by the Board of Selectmen, but is something we can recommend. I know Mark has said he's going to look into it and Wendy has been supportive of it, but we would like to see something happen, hopefully before the next budget cycle.
Yeah, I haven't talked about it with Mark, but when Lee Erdman was here, he brought that up and we had started working with Francine on it. So I can see where she is with that for a proposal.
Thank you. Also, I had been speaking with Art Wallace, who is not here. And he had a suggestion that over the summer, we start to look at our process and procedure and review that over the summer. And if there's no objection, I'll work with him on an agenda submission for either July or August to do that in consultation with Amy, get some bad ideas. Okay, so we'll do that. And moving on to the tax collection suspension list, which is on page 10. Each year, the Board of Finance must approve the tax collector suspension list for taxes that are deemed uncollectible. Most of the uncollectible taxes come from the motor vehicle tax. Often because someone has moved out of state, a resident has died, or taxes are not collectible due to federal bankruptcy discharge. Connecticut residents cannot register their cars until taxes are paid, and all personal property taxes have been turned over to the state marshal for collection. State law does require us to publish the names and the reason why it's uncollectible, so I'm sorry if that could be a little jarring to see that in the list, but that's required by state law and that's something we do voluntarily.
Yeah, page 10, did you say?
That's, yeah, beginning on page 10.
So this begins on page 15.
The list begins on 15.
15? Oh,
And you can see they're required to state the reason. Most of them are cannot locate. Right, and you know, sadly, there are a couple on there that I personally know have died, but so that's sad. Okay, are there any questions on the suspension list for Amy? This is something we do every year. Alright, with that, may I have a motion effective May 14th, 2024 to approve the suspense list in the amount of $68,472.18 and authorize tax collector Sherry Clemens to transfer these accounts to the suspense tax book.
so moved.
Second?
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, and I'm sorry, Sherry isn't here, but welcome to Sherry Clemens, our new tax collector replacing Colleen O'Connor. Okay. We'll now move on to the appointment of the auditor for fiscal year 23 and 24. The board, I believe, and Amy correct me, the board approved the auditor last time with the anticipation that it would be 3 years, but because of the way we do appropriations, we have to do a formal appropriation each year because appropriations lapse.
Correct.
That is on page 20. This is the auditor, we are the appointing authority by Connecticut general statute. So we have to be the ones to appoint the auditor, which makes sense since the auditor actually reports to us, not town staff. Are there any questions? We're using the same auditor and same people, is that right, Amy?
Correct.
Yeah, Clifton Larson Allen. Have there been any negative reports or any reason we should be concerned about doing this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Amy, can you talk about the,
And technically, we're in a 3-year agreement, right? So even if
well, no, but it's subject to Board of Finance appropriations.
If there were cause, we might be able to change it.
Even without cause.
Alright, without cause, that's what I guess I'm asking, is this anything but routine, are there any negatives here?
No. At this point, at some point, I mean, it is advisable to change auditors periodically.
So we actually are having a partner change this year. Nicoletta will not be the partner. Jessica Vetta, who is the manager, got promoted, so she will be the new partner on the job. So and then they also have a concurrent partner to review the partner's work. So I don't know who that is yet, but when I let you know, I'll find out.
Right. May I have a motion effective May 2024 to appoint Clifton Larson Allen LLP as the town of Simsbury's auditors for the fiscal year ending 23-24.
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, and we will now move on to the Board of Education quarterly report found on pages 21 through 23 of the agenda packets.
So just a couple of things to note on here, we already talked through the deficit portion of it, but on page 21 where you see the special education placements and excess cost, this is the excess cost grant that we refer to over and over again, where we have to hit 4.5 times the cost of a pupil in order to get reimbursed anything. And you can see there for the current year award, it's about 2.5 million, and then the prior year award was about 2.3 million. So a couple things on this, yes, it is more money, but because it's more money, all it's showing is that we're spending more money to get reimbursed more money. So for example, we had like 18-20% increases on some of our tuition contracts. So we're spending more money to get reimbursed. The other thing on this is our reimbursement should actually be more. So the state should be reimbursing us 85%. Last year we got reimbursed 73.7%, sorry. And this year we're only getting reimbursed 68.1%. So even though we're incurring those additional costs, the money coming back from the state is a predetermined pot, and then they allocate it to the towns accordingly. And we are not one of the towns that goes up in percentage, we tend to go down. So this has been a hot topic at the state level, and I know Lydia Tadone on the Board of Education has spent a lot of time at the state level advocating, but it's just another struggle within the special education system and how our costs are increasing, but our reimbursements are not following suit.
We're supposed to be 85, but we got 68, and when we anticipate next year in the budget, what are we in?
We were conservative, we did the 68.
When we budget for the Board of Ed, it's one of the few expenses we budget as a net expense in the operating budget. Almost all expenses are budgeted as gross. So because they budget as net, when there is a reimbursement, it goes directly to the Board of Education. If they budgeted it as a gross number, ironically, they would not be in deficit because the money would come back to the town of Simsbury. So that is something to consider for next year, discussions with Matt as to whether that's an advisable change. It is a government financial officer's best practice to budget gross and it would take care of any deficits on the government side. And then sometimes there is a windfall, however, in doing the net, and then the Board of Education does get the windfall. So there may be some way to accommodate that by, if we go to the gross thing, say if there is a windfall, that money then goes into capital reserves as an earmark for the Board of Ed, might be one way to handle it, but it's something to consider, think about. Not pushing it one way or another.
Who would make that decision?
So that's a great question. I think it would probably be the Board of Finance in consultation with the Board of Ed. I would wanna do that collaboratively, that's not one I'd wanna force, but
What's the impact of moving from net to gross though? Would that make their year over year look a
better
little more better?
for them, yes.
We'd have to increase our special ed expenditures by 2 million, so it'd make their budget go up 2 million, make their
Right.
revenues go up 2 million.
You know, it caused
So that
the,
would make their budget go.
The net's the same.
but the net's the same, so when there's a deficit, the deficit wouldn't hit their budget, it would hit the general fund. It's more a perception thing, it would,
Well,
It's geography, right?
it's
right.
geography,
Okay.
yeah. Which is why it's not that big a deal either way. Other than, you know, generally you want a budget so that the public can see what the actual
More
spending is.
transparent.
Yeah,
Put the revenue, the offset, the revenues.
Why doesn't it make their budget look worse if we do that, if the
Well,
budget is gross?
you would have to explain to the public why their budget went up 2 million. It's not, it doesn't hit the mill rate 2 million because there's a net offset. There would be some communication that would need to be done, and perhaps next year isn't the year to do it, given that we've just done 2 huge increases. But at some point, it's something to think about.
don't understand how that would make their,
Cause they would budget the gross number, the gross number is always bigger than the net, so it will look like their expenditures increased a lot.
how would that have made the 500,000 go away?
For them, not for us. So the way it works right now, they budget a net
That's less
number,
deficit,
money
right?
comes in from the state
Uh-huh.
and it
But
covers
goes
their
to the-
expense and it goes directly to
Yeah.
the Board of Education.
But if it were to go to the town instead,
They would have budgeted the full amount
right?
and when the state came in less, it wouldn't be the Board of Ed's problem, it would be the town's problem.
I see.
So our revenues would show less.
So it depends, like if it's tuition increase like 10 to 20%, then
I
it
was
would show on the
focused on
Board of Ed
something
side, but if it's a
different.
reduction in revenue, it would show on the town side.
Now I get it.
Yeah, so it's something long term to think about, it doesn't have to be fixed now or even next year, but just something to be aware of. That's part of the reason why some of the numbers look so skewed.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure why, what is the document we have before us? What,
I just printed that off of the town website, is this district school profile performance report as we start to review data for next year's budget. So,
is it appropriate to ask a question about it?
sure.
I'm just looking at the students enrolled October 1, 2022. And it appears that we have 2,119 males in our school system, but no females.
Right. So that I think shows the problem we have with data in this. This was on the Board of Ed site program and I just printed it off without looking at it carefully, but you're right, there's
Well, and
data.
even though there are no women in our school system, there are 256 who are chronically absent and no men who are chronically absent. I
So I
find,
think the data is probably off, and I'll double check and make sure that I printed the right one.
This is coming from the state,
Yes.
not from our own board.
Yeah, all right, that's right.
Yeah,
Right.
Ed site,
Connecticut Department of Education, but
yeah,
I hope we're providing them better data than this.
no, we are. I think it's just what they print out. All right, are there any other questions on the Board of Ed? Amy, what is private health budgeted for?
Private health, where do you see that?
I don't know, I had this in my notes and I don't see it
Oh, I
now.
think I know. It's under the revenues, the funding, funding to support
Oh, yeah.
private school health services provided by the district's health services staff. So this is money our nurses are required to provide services for the private schools in town and we get a reimbursement for that
Where do we budget for that?
under non-public.
Not, that's a non-public school expense, that's part of the 588 or 605 from last year,
Yep.
okay. Great. Wasn't sure what that was. Are there any other questions on the Board of Ed side? Amy, some of the numbers that we have here, the budgeted, are different than what they have posted on, what the Board of Ed has posted on the website as the budget for 2024?
I'll have to look, I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know why it would be different, but I'll take a look.
yeah. So I wasn't sure about that, I can give you my piece of paper, I sort of highlighted.
Oh, is it because this is public instead of total? Cause the non-public has not been included in here.
Well, they had maintenance of the plant listed.
Oh, the individual, alright, I'll take a look.
Those were just different. Are we on target for non-public schools? That's static, it won't change up or down ever
No, it
during the
will.
year?
It's just, we were typically like conservative in prior years, there's a little bit more cushion there.
But there's no risk of that going over. Art, if you look at the page 23, they actually have the
actuals on enrollment.
It's a little more reasonable,
Yes. Those are the actual numbers.
but it does not have a gender background.
No, that's just partial. Okay. For that, we are now going on to E, council referral. The board members will recall during the budget process, and questions came up as to why certain questions are in the referendum and some are not. And we have not really reviewed referendum questions in probably 20 years, and we thought it was time for a refresh. For instance, we approved CIP questions with the bond resolutions, but voters don't actually vote on that one. And debt service is on the referendum as a separate question, but it's a legal obligation, so we have to pay it even if people vote no. So why is that there? Other towns don't do that one. Our Wallace asked, can we place a capital project on the referendum that is below the charter amount required to be on the referendum for voter consideration? And the last question we had was, should question 3 be separated out instead of some combined number? And so those were some of the things we wanted council to review, look up what other towns do, and then come back with some options for us to consider for next year's budget. So without objection, I'll be reaching out to Bob and Amy unless anyone objects to it. Okay? So we'll see what that comes of that. Then we have the minutes. I did send Amy some minor changes. There was only one substantive change that I had, which was on page 34, second to the last paragraph. It's missing the part of the motion where we approve what departments are. So just ask Amy to add that, so we have it all in one document. Other than that, mine were adding an apostrophe, a comma, changing needs to needs, and was to were. Does anyone have any other changes? Okay, ma'am.
I think I was reading the submission by our colleague, my colleague Linda Schofield. She was from the Board of Finance, spoke about the high tax increase and said they must do better. Just wasn't sure who they is on this.
I imagine it's us and anyone else who worked on the budget.
I guess they is, well, let's just take it to mean all parties involved.
The tri-board.
Tri-board, they. Yeah,
They.
that's fine.
For us.
The three-legged stool, the other three-legged stool.
I could say we as a town must do better, but that's fine.
Okay, do you wanna make that, okay. Are there any other? All right.
I move
I second.
to approve both sets of minutes
With my changes.
with your important changes.
Was there a second? Art, House for the second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Recall during the audit, questions came up as to what the multi-year contracts were. Amy has provided a copy of the multi-year contracts at the end of the packet on page 67. Most, all spending in the operating budget can only be done for 1 year by state law unless there are exceptions within the Connecticut general statutes, or unless there is language in our contracts that say subject to the appropriation made by the Board of Finance in the budget. And so most of these, Amy, are all these listed subject to that, or those listed not subject to that? The auditors that we just approved tonight was a 3-year contract, but it's subject to Board of Finance appropriation.
Yeah, it looks like these would be standard contracts that Bob would approve, so yes.
Pardon?
It looks like these are standard contracts that Bob would approve. The only one I'm not sure about is the State of Connecticut Department of, well, there's no rent on that one, never mind. So yes, cause these are all recent ones.
So they would all have that language.
They would all have that language.
Were there any, we had questions on that during the audit, are there any further questions now that we've seen what they are?
Am I looking at the right list?
You
Is it
are.
Leases,
Yes.
so this doesn't include multi-year contracts, like employment contracts.
No, those are exceptions under state law. State law permits towns to enter in multi-year union contracts.
Okay.
State law permits towns to actually enter into a 5-year lease for buses. State law, there are certain state laws exceptions which is the exception to the 1-year appropriation.
What about things like software licenses? Are they all year to year?
Those we always do for a 1 year. There are like a couple of exceptions, but nothing material. I think like $20 or something like that here or there.
And utilities as well, often those are multi-year.
I don't know, I'd have to pull the contract, I don't think so. I think the rate might be, but not the actual, like if we close in on a rate, we get a rate protection, like we do that with our insurance. But I don't think there's a commitment in there to actually spend, but I'll check on that.
So did we renew the food pantry contract, because otherwise it's shows expired on this?
The food pantry contract did just get renewed. This year, I believe. So this is the leases associated with the fiscal year 23 audit. So any of them that expired would have been updated for the new audit. And some of them expire this year.
What I forgot to ask during your report, it looks like there's now going to be a Senate primary on the Republican side, which means there will be 14 days of early voting or 7 days of early voting for registered voters. Do they have sufficient funds to do that?
Yeah, we put money in contingency for that.
Are there any other questions, concerns for the good of the order? I would just like to point out that I deserve some kudos here.
You haven't closed the meeting yet.
All right.
Kudos are always in order.
I'm sure there's several speeches could
May I have a motion
be
to
offered.
adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
Any discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned in record time.
Nice, 32 minutes.
Record time.